Hey guys, Czar here. Hope all is well. It is 9:39. I've been talking into a microphone that was on pause for the entire time since the open here. Occasionally it happens. I get a bit distracted, and but nothing going on here this morning. All just kind of messy and grindy inside of the open range. Really no opportunities whatsoever. And so I'm just watching. We've got a mixed bag. We have bullish on the NASDAQ, bearish on the Dow, and usually, as we often see, the S&P is doing something in the middle of those two, and today is no exception. We're coming into this session with a without any bias, just kind of watching. We are on VWAP here, just below on the S&P. We are now below VWAP and the open range on the Dow, and in no man's land on the NASDAQ or in the NASDAQ. Here's the NASDAQ, really the vehicle I've been trading almost exclusively lately. I would say exclusively, actually. I can't remember doing a Dow or S&P trade for quite some time. It's probably been a few weeks at the very least. And that's for reasons I explain on my channel. Low VIX environment. But really, changing my mindset just a little bit here on the Three Sisters. It's really just a tweak in mindset, but it's trading all three sisters. Really what I am trading is the composite of these three, but using the NASDAQ as the vehicle of choice for entries because it does have the highest volatility profile, the most movement, if you will. But it really is taking what's happening here, creating a story from it, and a net story, if you will, and then entering that story using the NASDAQ. Obviously, because I'm using the NASDAQ as the vehicle of choice, what the NASDAQ specifically is doing is going to be very important and critical to the trade setup and the trade entry, but very much incorporating what's happening over here on the S&P and the Dow as well. So again, guys, very sloppy and messy in here this morning. I'm going to be very patient here. Rallying up, breaking the prior candle high here on the NASDAQ, but given the significant weakness on the Dow and below VWAP, I'm not going to entertain taking along here on the NASDAQ. I'm just trying to explain to you what I'm thinking. I've had a few questions lately, very good questions about what's actually going through my mind. I think that's really what the questions are. What's going through my mind as I'm looking at all of this and coming up with a decision as to what to do. And there are so many moving parts that it's actually quite difficult to articulate, but I'm trying to do so more and more as we move forward here to really clarify for myself what, nearly 40 years of, in fact, it is now 40 years of trading experience has brought to my brain, if you will, and what I now do unconsciously. How can I bring it to my conscious mind and explain what I'm looking at? From a very simplistic standpoint, right now I'm looking at correlation and alignment and synchronicity amongst these three. I don't need them to be doing exactly the same thing. Sometimes they will, sometimes they don't. But I need them to be supportive of what I'm contemplating here on the NASDAQ. If I'm thinking, long just because prices have moved above open range, which I wouldn't do, by the way, just because prices have moved above open range, then I need to look over here and say, well, is that being supported by the broader market? The S&P 500 stocks, right? NQ is just 100. They're in different sectors too, for the most part. There is overlap, of course. And then only 30 industrial stocks over here. Well, the market is currently being sold in the industrials, right in this moment, being sold on the blue chip 500, and kind of doing not much here on the NASDAQ. So there's nothing for me to do here, right? I need a compelling story to enter. I'll move over to the power grid. I'm going to look at structure. I'm going to look at structure on the daily. What's the daily chart telling me? Well, we've just yesterday broke into new all-time highs on the cash or spot market. We did close on new all-time highs, as we did here on the futures market, by the way. And then this morning have broken into new highs again, but now pulled back into the range, upper end of the range of yesterday. And that could be a bearish turn, right? We just don't know yet. And so without more information, there's nothing for me to do. You can see that we were trading higher here, sideways in the Asian market, in the UK market, and then broke down on that 8:30 news, went a little bit lower here, but now sitting at, a pretty weak zone, quite frankly, right here. But I put it in anyway because prices did in fact move up after the close of the market yesterday on earnings. We had Cisco earnings and a bunch of other things. Finding some support now on top of the open range, and watching now, guys. There could be a long opportunity here. Let me just take a look. We can do this together. I haven't done anything yet. This is not a live order. Let's go back over to the Three Sisters and see what they're doing. So the Dow is pulled back, showing a significant long leg of weakness. If that firms up now, it can be a supportive move to a long above here, right? And the S&P, of course, is doing nothing. So I can, for now, take that out of the equation. It's not supportive, but it's also not hurting the idea. It's sleeping sideways in the open range. So let's come back over to the power grid. Buy stop order, guys. Buy stop order live right now. I'm still watching now on a different monitor the Three Sisters. And I'm in, guys. And I'm in. I'm long the NASDAQ. Looking for just 1 hour here. Right there. Now bear with me. So why would I decide to go long here? Well, we have some clean traffic over here, right? Cleanish, I should say. We have mess over here, but this is from the UK session and the Asian session. It really was meandering sideways price action with no power behind it. There was no fuel or gasoline or caffeine behind this stuff. It's just markets doing what markets do when they don't really want to do anything, right? And then we have this move down, dramatic move down, fairly dramatic, relatively dramatic move down on the 8:30 news. We put in another bearish candle in the pre-market, and now the first candle of the New York session has broken above that prior candle and is looking to make a little move higher here. We don't know if it's going to accomplish that, but I'm willing to toss the coin on this because we are above rising EMAs, 9 above the 21, higher of the session above open range. Unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but one of the units of doubt is below VWAP. Now, this is, of course, the volume weighted average price, though, of all of the transactions that have occurred in the Asian session and the UK session, which, again, as we discussed, was kind of meandering, sleepy price action, right? So I'm not placing as much emphasis on that as I would if the market had been doing some fancy things in Asia and the UK. And I'm just realizing now as I'm articulating this that's something that my mind plays with every day when I'm looking at VWAP and considering whether it should be part of my decision-making equation or not. And today, I'm going to fairly completely ignore it. But I do want to see some more juice come into this market. But I can't make the market get juicy, right? Or get caffeine-y. I can only react to what the market is offering. We're only as good as what the market allows, right? Our setups are only as good as the price action that the market presents us. And this is the dance, right? We don't get to choose the soundtrack. We don't get to choose the style of music. We don't get to choose the volume of the music that's being played on the dance floor. We do get to choose if we want to join the dance or not, right? And I decided here to join the dance. May regret it. We'll see. Moving up a little higher now. Let's take a look. All right, guys, so here's an example of a trade that went halfway to my target. Sometimes I would move my stop to break even. I didn't on this one because there's no reason to. I don't have any compelling reason to get particularly nervous about this. We have kind of cleanish traffic here. We're in an open range. There's resistance up here. I could say that there is a little bit of resistance here, but it's not major enough for me to be overly concerned about. So this is a trade I'm going to allow to play out instead of dynamically moving to break even, just on this kind of gravity kind of curling back. There's nothing aggressive happening here. Now I will say that there's a Fed president speaking at 10 o'clock, which is, now it's 10:05 now, and they can say things and it can move the markets. That's a little bit of a concern, but not major enough that I'm willing to, dramatically increase my chances of being stopped out rather than staying in this trade and see how it plays out. All right, gang, getting awfully close to being stopped out here. And this could have been exactly what I was just referring to about the Fed president making a comment. It does happen. Speaking 10 a.m. 10:30 is Harker. Mester's at 11:30 and Bostic at 11:50. So it's a full day or full morning of Fed speakers. Still alive here for now. There's a reason we place stops below the session low or below the open range, one of the two. Sometimes it's both. In this case, it's both. And there it is, guys. Finally, took a while, took quite a long while. It's now 10:47 a.m., but patience eventually paid off. Came very close here to being stopped out, but not quite, and that's why we use the session low and the open range as the stop. At least that's the reason I do it, and it will often protect, but not always, of course. And so there it is, guys. 1R, bullish and daily, flipping bullish on the 30, of course. On the open, breaking above session high for the entry, above the 9 above the 21. Three sisters showing that they were starting to agree here on the Dow, if you remember, right? Here's the breaking out of the NASDAQ. You can see a simultaneous and really doing nothing, as I mentioned and explained, I think, in pretty good detail there at the beginning of the video. For me, that's, almost an hour ago, but for you, it'll be a few seconds. And then finding support and eventually getting firm here on the Dow and the S&P, and of course the NASDAQ resuming its uptrend after almost stopping me out down here at the bottom end of that open range. Not much more to add to that, pretty self-explanatory. Fairly clean traffic over here on the 30-minute chart, and just moving up to the top of the zone or the top of the range, and then taking profits at 1 hour. Thanks for being with me today, guys. Have an amazing afternoon. We'll talk to you soon.